Alex ZAHAROV REUTT is talking tech on today's News Talk, TNT.
Thank you for joining me for another edition of Talking Tech with Alex ZAHAROV REUTT here on TNTRadio.live. So, what's in the tech news this week? Well, let's start with Meta, who have celebrated 10 years since Mark Zuckerberg announced the acquisition of Oculus and began pushing forward his vision of the metaverse in earnest. The company boasts of a decade of investment in reality labs, including futuristic research, continuous product development, and a whole lot of prototypes. Milestones include the Oculus Rift VR headset in March 2016, with its first-gen touch controllers in December of that year. 2018 saw the launch of Meta's first standalone product, the Oculus Rift Go. Oculus Rift S arrived in May 2019, and then the first standalone VR headset, the Quest, arrived later in 2019 with no wires required. After that came the Quest 2, which I have myself, and the Quest Pro arrived in October 2022. And then last year, the Meta Quest 3, which at $499 is 7 times cheaper than Apple's first generation Vision Pro headset, which starts at US $3,500 and goes up depending on lenses, storage sizes, and more. There's also Meta's Ray-Ban Stories glasses, which let you listen to podcasts and music, make voice calls, and take hands-free photos and videos. The second-gen Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses, it dropped the name Stories, they arrived in September last year, which upgraded the cameras to 12 megapixels, and they offered improved audio, live streaming to Facebook and Instagram, and they also introduced Meta AI. Now, they're promising that new experiences are coming soon, including multimodal AI, which means the glasses can understand what you're seeing to provide helpful answers. Very much sci-fi vision there. Now, in the blog post, Meta's example is of dinner time, and they say that, look, you're out of ideas. So you'll be able to lay out some ingredients on the counter and ask Meta AI to give you some recipe suggestions. We'll say that you're traveling and you come across a sign in German. You'll be able to look at the text and ask Meta AI to translate it for you on the fly. Now, it's possible to do some of these things with your mobile phone. You've got to hold it up or your tablet. But of course, when it's on glasses, it's hands-free. So the next step for Meta AI is infused AR, or augmented reality smart glasses, presumably once again with Ray-Ban. Meta says that it is building a new kind of computing platform that will help us, in their words, better communicate with the people and things that you care about in a way that's much more natural and intuitive than what's possible with today's 2D screens. They're promising experiences that help you sync up with friends and family to work, learn, play, shop, and create, as well as completely new experiences that don't easily fit into the mold of how we use computers and smartphones today. Meta, of course, aren't the only ones working on this. Apple's Vision Pro already does augmented reality, as does the Meta Quest 3 headset, but the world is waiting for AR glasses that look like regular glasses rather than ski goggles, and the rest of this decade is going to finally see much faster evolution in this space, so that by 2030, AR glasses should finally be commonplace and much more affordable, and I can't wait to see it, with the pun fully intended. Now, it's time to introduce my guests for this week's episode. These are the co-founders Samantha Costa, nurse team leader, clinical specialist nurse from the CHARLI.health app, and also Associate Professor Dr. Anusch Yazdani, Medical Director at Endometriosis Australia. I welcome you both to the program.
Hello, Alex. Lovely to be here.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Now, Samantha, let's please start with you. The CHARLI Health app is incredible in the number of health issues that it tracks for women, and it's been developed here in Australia. So can you please tell us its features and benefits?
Yeah, so CHARLI originated from a few pieces of research that we did many, many years ago. We looked at the health apps on the market because I was looking for something that fits, I guess, our clinical practice and people like myself. And I just couldn't find one that really was Australian-centric, had the right sort of lingo that I guess we use in clinical terms, but also had that benefit to patients and users rather than just tracking symptoms. So CHARLI is a hybrid model. We have a cycle tracker. We use AI to help with diagnostics and basically putting diagnosis and treatment in the patient's hand. We've also got a virtual clinic in there and also a native research platform as well to be able to link users with current or ongoing research that's happening here in Australia.
So some of the other features, though, I mean, it works with perimenopause. It works for, periods and for
Yeah,
sexual
so
issues. Just
we're
tell us about some of
focusing,
those features.
yeah, so focusing on some of the women's health concerns that the Australian government has actually laid out in the National Plan for Women's Health from 2020 to 2030. They include endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, POI, or primary, oh my goodness, premature ovarian insufficiency, PMDD, and perimenopause.
So that's our first focus, really, as we're starting
Right.
over here with the gynae. So we're doing gynae first, and those are the 5 health priorities that we've worked out initially. And so
And,
endo, of course, came in because it's Endo March, and I'm the medical director for Endometriosis Australia. So that was our natural fit, really, to have a look at the first time.
sure. And when you say gynae, you mean gynecological?
Yeah, gynecological. Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're women's health here all the time. Yeah. And so gynecological elements come first. And then our next iteration will be focused on fertility. And then that will be coming out in September. And then the last iteration will, in fact, be pregnancy. And we're looking at that in January of 2025.
Okay, so Professor Yazdani, I'm sure that many people watching already know, but for those who don't or need a refresher, can you please tell us what endometriosis is, how many women it affects, and why it's a real problem for many women globally?
Yeah, look, endometriosis has been described as a disease where tissue similar to the lining of the uterus grows on other organs. And those are what are called endometriosis. And the most commonly other organs involved are pelvic structures. So it's the uterus, the ovaries, and the tubes, but it's really been found everywhere. Now, that's a fairly simplistic sort of description of what is a really formidable inflammatory disorder that has a massive impact on women and productivity Australia-wide. We think that at the moment, the direct cost of endometriosis to the Australian taxpayer is measured in the hundreds of millions of dollars per year. So it is a massive impact. In women, it causes pain, and it specifically causes pain with periods, and it causes pain with sex, but also infertility. Our most recent data suggests that about 1 in 7 women, and these are the Gen Xers, will be diagnosed with endometriosis by the age of 50. But out of our millennials, so we're looking at that population as well, we think that at the age of 30, there's a much higher percentage that have been diagnosed with endometriosis. And we're not really sure why that is. Some of that may be that as we have done more education, women are more aware of it. But it's absolutely possible that we're actually seeing a change in the incidence of the disease as well. And that would not be uncommon. We've seen that in other areas. So we've seen fertility rates around the world drop, and it would not at all be unusual to see the rates of endometriosis also to increase. The most common symptoms, which are pain with period and pain with sex, are really what are causing the significant issues. And of course, the flow-on effect of that is this vast emotional relationship work effect that it has on women personally, but also on the society as a whole.
Now, I was actually listening to local radio last night, and I was listening to a story about endometriosis, and they were talking about how this particular person, this young lady, was experiencing like 10 out of 10 pain. This pain came on, they had to pull over, and it took a while for the diagnosis to be confirmed that it was endometriosis. We'll talk about sort of that in a moment. But how common is this, blank out pain that is debilitating?
It's unfortunately not uncommon in women who've been diagnosed with endometriosis. It has a massive effect on those people. Now, how it relates, whether it's small episodes of prolonged pain or episodes of severe pain that affect productivity, is really quite variable. The natural history of it is such that often it presents with young women after they've just had their very first periods, and it initially just presents as pain with periods, and then it becomes a more generalized pain, and it starts taking over absolutely every other aspect of a woman's life, from relationships to being able to have sex and have normal work. All of that is really quite significantly impacted in women who have endometriosis.
And look, we're going to go into more details in a moment. I don't know if you want to answer this question, Samantha, but is surgery the only option for treating this, or are there other treatment options?
It's definitely not the only treatment option, but it is one that some women may need to exhibit at some point in time. And that really just comes down to, I guess, how it's impacting their life, but also age, social demographics, and also access to care, because we know specifically in Australia, or the majority of our medical services are on the East Coast, and we've got a large population of people that don't have readily available access to that care.
Now, Professor Yazdani, you're also a co-founder of the app, as I would have mentioned at the very beginning, and you're also with Endometriosis Australia. Now, you did explain a little bit about the app at the beginning, but was the app created with endometriosis in mind, or is this something that you realized would be an additional capability that the app could deliver?
Yeah, look, this was part of a paper that we presented about 3 months ago now, and everything that we're doing, we're trying to publish it, because this is, like we were talking, Alex, just before the show, this is such a new area and it's very exciting. And so we're trying to share as we're breaking new ground for other people to be able to follow and learn from what we have done. So we presented this paper at the beginning of this year, and it really the way that we've developed this was we looked at where the gaps are in knowledge and where some diseases are that we can actually make a difference on. And as Sam had suggested, those 5 diseases are endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, infertility, PMS, and perimenopause. Those are chronic diseases that have a massive impact on women's health, and we can actually do some interventions. So we did a systematic review and an analysis, and we identified all of the instruments. And so in medicine, we talk about an instrument as a diagnostic tool. So there are various diagnostic tools that are out there to make diagnoses of some of these. And we've integrated all of these into one space and then ported them to an app, so that users can use that rather than the way that we administer it in our clinics, which is to fill out a questionnaire about this. So this is now an ongoing collection of validated instruments that we've used before. As we said, our next steps from here are endometriosis was timely and appropriate because it's endo month, and this is one of the largest gaps that we have. And it is what women want, that they want to have diagnostics and therapeutics in their own control. And we can do that relatively simply with things like mobile apps. But the other elements that are coming from here are really fertility and pregnancy, and they're just down the track.
Yeah. Now, I can see in the chat that somebody's saying that health apps are incredibly insidious in nature. The info they collect is mind-boggling. So how much information does the app collect? I'm just being led by what's in the chat room there. And what sort of privacy and security do you put around the information so that it's only shared with people that it needs to be shared with and nobody else?
So we have, so when you log on to our app, there's an enrollment feature that allows you then to enter as much or as little information about yourself and where you are and what your goals are. And I guess that goes to some of the questions that we'll probably come to a little bit later about the role of the AI. Of course, the AI's function is to assist you, but the more information you provide the AI, the more information, the more it can then actually provide as well. And so our data is fully encrypted, both in transition as it goes to storage and where it's stored. So we meet all of the requirements for Australian digital health, and that's very, very important that that data is secured and it's fully encrypted.
And European.
And the European standards. What it also means is that users can opt in to sharing their data for very specific purposes. So when you enroll to use CHARLI, then you agree to have some of the data provided that is there for purely for your own use. But we use summative data in terms of getting some information about the performance of our systems, but that's not medical data. Now, the third element of what Sam had said was that CHARLI, the environment is we have a research arm in there. And we know that women want to be involved in research. They want to further diagnosis and treatment in areas like endometriosis. And sometimes it's very difficult to connect end users or patients with the research, even though they'd like to be involved in it. And so CHARLI has the capacity to run research where women can then opt, or users can opt into research, specific research, and then share elements of the data that they're collecting on a daily basis to be used in our research processes. And so that research looks at things like novel treatments for endometriosis. It allows us to use specific interventions and then look and see what outcomes are, like pregnancy or pain, in terms of things like endometriosis surgery.
Well, look, that's good to know. Hopefully that answers the question for the person in the chat room who was asking about that. We're just going to take a quick break. So we'll be joining you in just after this particular break. But why not give TNT Radio a follow? We are on all the major social platforms, including Facebook, X, Instagram, Gab, and Getter. Help us to get the word out as we cover the biggest topics of our time right here on today's News Talk, TNT. See you after the break.
TNT's James Freeman.
The Biden administration is planning to use Florida as a leading processing site for more than 320,000 illegal migrants that the administration is flying into the country. Yes, this apparently is all about solving the problem at the southern border, as Biden's solution to the problem is to fly illegals directly into the country on direct flights. Yes, that's right. In order to reduce pressure at the border, the Biden administration is going to fly illegal migrants into America, and the plan is to send more than 320,000 of them to Florida for processing.
James Freeman on today's News Talk, TNT. TNT is an independent global news talk station that does what others only say they do. TNT is a live radio and TV broadcaster that simply tells the truth 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No one in the world does what we do, crisscrossing the globe, providing credible news and opinion all day and all night. In 2.5 years, TNT has become a credible and exciting platform with brilliant hosts and staff. It's a critical time, and we must continue to call out the misinformation and propaganda from mainstream media and their powerful sponsors. We're now appealing to our many friends and supporters around the world to go to tntradio.live and make a small donation to TNT while we seek the right investors to continue our important mission.
Plug in.
Website tntradio.live.
Check it out.
Today's News Talk Radio.
It's the coolest.
TNT.
Thank you for joining me again on Talking Tech with Alex ZAHAROV REUTT, my guests Dr. Anusch Yazdani and Samantha Costa. Now, to both of you, I saw the information that you shared about the app that endometriosis can take years to diagnose. So why is this, and how does the app help make this diagnosis much faster and more accurate?
Can I take that? Is that all right?
Yes. Yeah, please.
On average in Australia, it takes just under 6 years to be diagnosed with endometriosis. Now, we're actually doing much better than some of the other countries. Now, before 2005, the time from onset of symptoms until a diagnosis of endometriosis was made was over 12 years. And that's rapidly dropped to just under 6 years in the last decade. And the majority of that has really been around getting more information out, particularly to healthcare practitioners, and getting an understanding. And Endometriosis Australia, of course, has been very active in this space in terms of teaching specialists and medicos about this disease and its impact on women. Unfortunately, it still takes about 4 practitioners to be seen by a woman before she's actually diagnosed with endometriosis. The element that we don't seem to have been able to shift is that while we've reduced the total time from onset of symptoms, from first presentation to a GP until a diagnosis is made, the time frame from the first onset of symptoms until somebody actually realizes that there's a problem, that's remained fixed at 3 years. So all of our advances have been from when they first present to a GP until a diagnosis has been made. But those first 3 years have not been able to be shifted. And that's really where something like CHARLI comes in, because it's all about telling someone that what you're experiencing is actually quite abnormal. You got to understand that the diagnostic delay in endometriosis is due to a number of different factors. One of them is the nature of the pain experience itself. We don't have any way of quantifying the way that different people experience pain. The pain that you might be experiencing may be very large on a scale that you're saying, but your impact on your life may be very little. It's just because of the way that you cope. So we have no direct way of comparing pain between individuals. The second element is that conditions like endometriosis often run in families. So if your mum and your sister have always taken time off in order to from school because they've had problems with their periods, it makes sense then if you yourself have done that, that's just normal. Okay, so there's a normalization of abnormal behavior. And then the last thing that we know, particularly for rural and remote populations, is that when women present with pain to their GPs or specialists, that they're less likely to be taken seriously. And that's independent of the gender of the specialist or the GP that they're seeing. We know that women with pain are less likely to be investigated, are less likely to be diagnosed, are less likely to receive treatment. And so this is part of the gender gap and the gender differentials in terms of pain. CHARLI is an independent arbiter of your pain. So CHARLI will identify if your pain goes outside of normal, if you're logging on and saying, look, my pain is this, and I haven't been able to go to work or I haven't been able to enjoy that. And even though your sisters may be doing the same thing, CHARLI will pick up on that and say, hey, look, this is not normal. One of the first feedbacks that we had when we launched the app was that, women want to be able to log their cycles. And one of the complaints that we had is, well, why can't I log a cycle that's 55 days long? And the reason for why you can't log a cycle that's 55 days long is because you shouldn't be having a cycle that's 55 days long. While lots of apps out there allow you to just journal whatever you like, CHARLI doesn't allow that. So CHARLI will pick up on problems immediately as they present and then would say to you, hey, look, have you considered that there may be an issue? There are people that you want to talk to, or here's information for you to have a look at.
Now, we'll talk about the AI features in a moment, but I just wanted to know, and I don't know if this depends on the AI features or not, but how short should the diagnosis then be when you use CHARLI.health? I mean, is it going to reduce it from 3 years down to a few months, or do we not yet know because it's so new?
We don't know. We absolutely don't know, Alex. And that's part of the problem. And even though we've run in Australia, we've been very lucky. We've had a national program for endometriosis. So we're the only country in the world that's actually had a national plan for the management of endometriosis. And we've brought education to schoolgirls and young women, but we haven't been able to shift that time frame yet. And we're really not sure why. And I think part of that is just the nature of this experience. It is intensely personal. It relates to development. It relates to reproduction and sexuality. So it is not something that is often talked about, even in our new generations, our Gen Zs, still having issues at times talking about this, though it is becoming more normal. And they are relying more and more on external advice. And if they're living in a family, or if they're in a rural or a remote location where they don't have anybody else to say to them, hey, is this normal? They're not picking up on it.
So, Samantha, when did the app launch? And tell us about the AI features that have been added to the app to track all these health metrics and figure things out.
Yeah. So the app launched just over a week ago now. So it's very, very new on the market. And as Anusch suggested, we have presented a paper on all of this at the last meeting that we attended. And really, we're looking at different diagnoses. And so the AI that we have is very specific for those diagnoses, but also the information that the user is putting in. So like Anusch also, spoke about earlier, the information that the patient puts in, or the more information that the user puts in, the more accurate the potential flags that they will get for abnormalities will be. So for example, something like infertility, we have a rather simplistic algorithm for diagnosis. So if the user was less than 35, was having sex with no contraception, and hadn't had any pregnancies, miscarriages, or anything like that in a 12-month period, then they would get an infertility alert. So for some conditions, it is literally that simple. For other things like PMS, PMDD, we've got validated questionnaires that our AI has been learning off, and also the information that the patient or the user can put into the app allows that to be picked up by the AI and flagged that, hey, you've said you've got a mood or a really low mood for this amount of time in your cycle. This is ongoing. This isn't normal.
And I read in the information you shared that it works with Apple Watches and Fitbits. And how does it, use those devices? What metrics does it pick up? And will it work with other wearables like Samsung and other smart watches and other smart fitness bands?
Yeah, so the wearables will be integrated into both the logging and the tracking of symptoms, but also obtaining some metrics such as heart rate and temperature. These will help identify not only things like ovulation, but also with our post-operative patients, help manage post-operative complications as well.
Oh, Sam's telling about things that are in upcoming releases, but yes. So we're using, particularly because we're all wearing watches these days, they've become omnipresent. Yeah, exactly. It's a great way to log information and to give you alerts. And some of them actually contain some really, really useful features that are really important in things like pain management. So I'm not a persistent pain sufferer, thankfully, but I know that it's important to do things like the mindfulness app, and those sort of elements really help ground people. And we now have good data to suggest that helps in the management of things like pain. So that's where wearables are becoming really, really essential in our current system.
And are you integrating some of those mindfulness features that are existing inside of Apple Watch, for example, into the CHARLI Health app to prompt people to do it?
Exactly. That's part of so we are in the process of rolling out a management strategy for pain flares. You had mentioned earlier on about that the poor woman who had that severe pain. So pain management is more than just popping some pills and analgesia. Pain management is about a whole range of things that people can do. Lots of them are available at the point of care, and the wearables will be absolutely integrated into doing that. So we're giving that to people at the moment, to our patients that we see in terms of pain management protocols. But with things like an AI or with CHARLI, we can just roll that out.
Now, we have OpenAI's ChatGPT, we have Google's Gemini, Hugging Face, Anthropic, Claude. There's a whole stack of different AI engines out there. Which one are you using? And are you using it in a customized way, or just is it the off-the-shelf version?
Yeah, look, this whole AI thing is a little bit tricky, isn't it? Yeah. Sometimes people say that they're using an AI, but what they really have is lots of if-then statements and algorithms. That's really not an AI. And at other times, they're just using a direct API call to integrate a general sort of API like the ChatGPT. Now, in our system, we've used our AI very specifically, and we're using the generative pre-trained model, so the GPT-4 model. That's been the most appropriate and securely deployed in our development and staging environment. So that's what made it the most easy. Now, the important thing is less so the language model that's used, but probably how you ground it. And what we did is it's been grounded in a massive Australian data set. Essentially, we have fed our LLM everything that I learned in becoming a specialist. We've used mountains of research and validated external data. So it is a ring-fenced AI that has access to its pre-training because its origins come from GPT-4. But in fact, it's trained and worked on our data sets. Now, that's training is what makes the LLM unique. we've spent lots of time on prompt engineering and making sure that you're getting the right information, and reinforcement learning with human feedback, because of course that's what then tells it how to work. One of the issues, as you know, with all of the AIs is we're all worried about this issue that all of a sudden they just flip out and they fabricate data and you get a whole lot of hallucinations. So in 2020, we wrote one of the first papers using ChatGPT to write a scientific paper. That's become quite common now, but in Australia, we did one of the very first publications with this. And we asked ChatGPT to write about, please tell us about new things in obstetrics and gynecology. And we wrote this lovely 2,000-word paper that was fully referenced, we specifically prompted it to use references from PubMed and from scientific literature. But when you actually look at the references, they were completely fabricated. They look real. They look like they belong to real authors. But in fact, the whole thing is a hallucination. And that is the risk when you're applying AI systems, particularly to a medical setting. And for us, it was really, really important that CHARLI is really appropriately referenced, that it uses data that has been validated, and that we're not running into issues. So our CHARLI as an AI firstly has access to user data. So it allows you then to say, hey, CHARLI, when are the best days for me to conceive in November? And it'll give you your dates based on your data. Secondly, CHARLI's been grounded in the data set that we've provided, so CHARLI can advise you on issues on how to manage pain, for example, based on the information that we fed it. And then lastly, CHARLI can also, because of its origins from the GPT-4, can also go outside, but we've restrained it from doing that. So if you ask it, what are the best hotels to stay in Budapest, it will not answer. It's been designed not to do that answer, but it will ask questions that are just a little bit outside. So for example, if you're talking about being sad and upset, while that's not specifically gynecological, it will actually answer questions and things that you can do to manage that. And more importantly, because this is also so personal, CHARLI can actually give you answers to things that you wouldn't be happy to ask your specialist or your bestie, really. So, things that you might be too embarrassed to ask, CHARLI can give you those answers.
And just to be clear for people who are wondering, this is using OpenAI's ChatGPT-4 and presumably the GPT-4 Turbo that was launched in November.
Yeah, exactly. So it's GPT-4 in its iteration, and it's just ring-fenced. So the data is not shared. The data is ours, and it's our own vector database. It's our own training. That's what's made it doesn't make sense to reinvent a large language model. The investment in those is massive, and we've chosen GPT just simply because it worked well with all of our other dev environments, and it has performed really well.
We've really tested and tried to push it outside of where we would feel comfortable, and thinking about younger users using it, but also just with regards to the fact that it is medical, and I've done some research on it from that perspective as well, and we weren't able to get a response that we weren't happy with or we thought was dangerous.
And do you expect to upgrade to GPT version 5 when it launches in the next 2 or 3 months, very quickly, or will you take some time to test it all first?
I think we will need to have a look at that. So again, as each of these arise, the difficulty is the unexpected elements that pop out of this, because as you know, it's a little bit of a gray or a black box really as to what's happening. And while we're very grounded in our own areas, there is always the risk that it'll slip outside, which is why we are very conservative, and safety is the most important thing in this, and which is why it's so ring-fenced in terms of what it can do. Of course, newer often means faster, better, more intuitive, and so we will be looking at that as soon as it's out.
And did you see this week's news from the CSIRO that they tested with the University of Queensland ChatGPT and asked it all these different questions, asked it 100 questions. And oddly, the more information they gave in specifying a particular medical problem, the less accurate the system became. I mean, you were saying that you tested it, so this presumably didn't happen to you, but that must have been a surprising, it was certainly a surprising finding to me.
I agree. And we when that came out, we've actually done exactly that. Now, one of the things we have as part of our prompt engineering has been to allow you not to do that. So you cannot enter massive amounts of text like they have. The answers are based on the information that you have provided throughout, rather than taking it down the channels where it starts hallucinating and providing inaccurate information. And that goes back to exactly the same issues that we had with that original paper that we wrote in 2020, where it was just making stuff up, and we can't have that.
Yeah.
So the research that we did was looking at fertility questions that a fertility patient may ask initially, and then obviously as we've expanded CHARLI, then we've taken that through the endometriosis PCOS space as well. And again, like Anusch said, when we look at that first piece of research compared to the smaller bits that we feed in, definitely it doesn't hallucinate out with small grabs that we enter into it.
The part of our next release is the fertility release, and it particularly looks at support and assisted reproduction. And our people like Sam's the nurse manager for all of our fertility nurses, and a whole lot of their questions go around repeatedly providing the same information but in a personalized way. And so our last paper looked at taking all of those questions and then presenting them. And at that stage, it was literally ChatGPT-3, in fact, it was, and presenting all of those to the chatbot and seeing what sort of responses we get. And in fact, the responses were very appropriate, and at times, sometimes better than, in fact, what a nurse would present, or a specialist, I should say, right, as well. So I think the potential for this technology is huge, particularly if it's been trained appropriately.
And I think that the support that this technology can give people also too, maybe more than what we as clinicians can provide, because we know that, if you're calling at 8 o'clock in the morning, you might get a much more in-depth response from us compared to 6 o'clock at night when we've been working for 12 hours, whereas the AI and CHARLI doesn't tire. It does. If you need that additional support, it's there. It's validating it all the time.
We know that our patients particularly do things like looking at information at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they often go to Google, but Google, of course, is not verified, and they don't know what they're looking for. When you're going to a restrained AI, we know that you're at least getting the right information.
Yes. The dangers of Dr. Google has now been added to by the dangers of Dr. ChatGPT.
Exactly.
But of course, having a specific health app that has been constrained in the way that you've described is it's a good thing to say. But look, it's time to take another break, so we'll be back with you in a moment, Dr. Anusch and Samantha. I just want to note that you don't have to miss out on a thing. Please be sure to download the TNT Radio app from either the Apple App Store or Google Play, the same places you can download the charli.health app, so you can easily watch or listen live to us anywhere and anytime. It's available right now to download, keeping you up to speed on today's News Talk TNT. Back after this break.
I'm Cal Fire Battalion Chief Isaac Sanchez, and normally we like to provide you with tips on how to keep yourselves and your family safe during wildfires. But given the historic impacts that the weather has had on our state this year, we would like to provide you with tips on how to keep yourself safe during extreme weather. If you reside in an area susceptible to flooding, please take the necessary steps to prepare to evacuate if advised. Make sure you've identified at least 2 exit routes out of your neighborhood, as one of them may be blocked or flooded. As the weather develops, remember to check in on vulnerable neighbors and family members. They may need additional time to prepare for evacuation. And just like during a wildfire, if you feel unsafe, please evacuate. You don't have to wait for the order to come. Keep an emergency go bag ready in case you need to evacuate. And always remember to plan for the safety of your pets as well. If you must leave, never drive around roadblocks. It can take as little as 12 inches of water to sweep your vehicle away. And always remember the mantra, turn around, don't drown. Be aware of first responders working in highly impacted areas, especially on the roads. For additional safety tips and updates on CAL FIRE activities, follow us on social media or visit fire.ca.gov.
Whatever happened to good? It's a word that gets thrown around a lot, and it's become our automatic answer to so much.
Hey, how's things?
Good.
Your mum, your weekend?
Good, good. Is good even that good anymore? At the Salvos, we believe good deserves better. Let's reclaim its true meaning. To us, good has always been about making a difference, and good never picks or chooses who it helps. Isn't it time we all remember what good really means?
This is Talking Tech with Alex ZAHAROV REUTT on today's News Talk, TNT.
Thank you for joining me again. I'm joined by Dr. Anusch Yazdani and clinical specialist nurse Samantha Costa, the co-founders of the CHARLI.health app. Now, to both of you, what does the app cost to use? I mean, I'm sure it's available to download for free. And is it only available to Australians? Or given that endometriosis is a global issue and we have a global audience, is this app available to anyone anywhere around the world?
So it is free for the first 3 months once you download, and then the monthly cost is less than $2. So it's $1.99 Australian to use the app afterwards. That is certain areas of the app. A lot of the app will still be for free. So it's only the AI component of it that people will have to pay for if they wish to continue to use it.
So the important functions of it, like cycle tracking, the diagnostics and analysis, is actually free. We've thought that was important for people to have access to that. Elements that you pay for are the chatting with CHARLI, like we just talked about, and then also use of the webinars and the sort of ancillary content that we have will be sort of behind a paywall. And as Sammy said, that's sort of sitting at just under $2 a month.
And is the app available globally?
It is only available in Australia at the moment. That's for a couple of reasons. One, Australians don't feature, or the Australian health environment doesn't feature on any of the other apps that are on the market. So this was something quite specific that we really wanted to do. We have a lot of people that come in and want to have a chat or want different treatment options that they've seen on different apps that they've read about, but they're not necessarily available in Australia. So it was about providing that health literacy to the Australian women and those assigned female at birth. But we have had a lot of interest from people overseas. So it's definitely something that we are in the works and talking about. But at the moment, it is just home soil at the moment.
And of course, the other element of the app is that there is a virtual clinic attached to it. So there are telehealth services. And again, that was important for us. Australia has such a unique environment in that we have such a low population density and such a spread out population that, as Sammy had said, sometimes it's very hard for people to actually access the right professional. So it was important for us to be able to allow people to at least access credentialed, appropriate healthcare practitioners. And we have GPs, physiotherapists, counselors, dietitians, specialists in telehealth service and nurse practitioners, yes, and nurse practitioners online who help to help assist and to perform and to work through some of the diagnostics. But they're all at a telehealth price. And so for the GP, for example, in Australia, that puts you $33 out of pocket to have a telehealth consultation with a GP, which, if you think about traveling, parking, doing everything else, taking time off, to be able to access that in your pocket is probably not an unreasonable thing to do, but those are additional costs.
Yeah, and I guess the importance of something like a GP or the physio nutritionist is that they are women's health specific. So they've gone through a credentialing process with us, but they also have that area of expertise and also interest, which is really important when we're talking about some of these women's health specific issues.
I mean, as we said before, sometimes women present with symptoms, and we have had feedback that women, particularly in the endometriosis space, are dismissed. Oh, it's just period pain. Have a baby. You'll grow out of it. It's okay. It's all in your head. We don't want women to have those experiences. That's not appropriate. And so this allows women to have access to those type of services in a controlled environment where they're seeing credentialed specialists. Australia has a number of pelvic pain units that have been funded. So we have 22 pelvic pain units, which are amazing. But again, these are all Eastern Seaboard, very localized. So this app gives you your pelvic pain unit in your pocket, really, and allows you to access those services.
Yes, the tyranny of distance certainly has been eliminated by the fact that we have Zoom and we have internet connections and 5G. Are these telehealth sessions done on your phone, or can they be done on a tablet or a computer as well?
They can be done on your phone, they can be done on a tablet, they can be done on a computer. It's really whatever works for the patient. From, I guess, the research that we did with consumers before actually launching CHARLI, most people wanted that to be done on a phone so that they could do that wherever, whenever, didn't need to have a laptop or a desktop somewhere. But yeah, no, the patient or the user can do that on whatever platform they want to.
Sure. And you've already explained about some of the other features that will be coming in future versions, but are there any other thoughts on how the app will evolve over the next year and beyond, and any other health metrics that it will measure?
Yeah, look, so much stuff coming here, really. I think the biggest issue is that the research element will, as we said, fertility and pregnancy will be coming out, but the research element is really developing in parallel. What we have released was our MVP, so our minimum viable product, to just see whether or not there is actually reach and whether or not this is something that women want. It's quite something to develop something with women for women, but in the end, we all have our own biases, and what we think is excellent and what I'd like to see doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually something that other people want. And so we now know that absolutely, the demand for this has been huge. We've just been overwhelmed by this. And our next releases here really look at assisted reproduction, and in terms of facilitating the journey of women through ART. So we're both fertility professionals, so that really sits with us. And the next one is pregnancy. And in pregnancy, we have some really, really exciting things that can now be done with app. I mean, these things are just so amazing in terms of what can be measured and what can be done. And particularly, this is where AI in its purest form comes in that you're trying to isolate electrical signals out of a background of electrical information that your watch is collecting, and trying to use that to predict things like preterm labor, abnormal growth, all of those sort of bits and pieces. The future is looking really, really bright.
I think also too, when we look at the future of CHARLI as a whole, one of the reasons that we launched so early with our MVP is so that we continue to get input from women that are using it. Whilst we've got, I guess, a map as to where we want to see CHARLI go, we've got the flexibility to be able to pivot and to be able to continue to add things that women want to see in there as well, which has been, I guess, the biggest thing and of importance for the whole team when we've been developing CHARLI, so that we continue to develop something that is useful to people, not just useful to us. And that's not just users, but also clinicians. We want to develop something that clinicians want their patients to use and is helpful for clinicians to have their patients on as well.
Well, it's great to see there's the rich roadmap ahead. Without giving any secrets away, are you already thinking of other apps that you'd like to develop?
Yeah, we are actually. Like, AI has just made life so much easier. Yeah. So we were looking at, and there are some transcription services as well, but we want to take other things along with us. There are lots of ideas going at the moment. Once you're in this space, it's hard to stop, really.
Yeah, and also it's good to know that the app's going to be quite affordable. $1.99 per month is a lot cheaper than what it costs to get the premium versions of chat, GPT version 4, which is something like, $30+ in Australia. But because you've been able to ring fence it and really focus it on that those health areas, I guess you've been able to avoid those much more expensive costs. I use a thing called Sleep Cycle, and it's got a Sleep GPT. I had to pay extra for that. And I asked it about myself, and it gave me the same sort of answer that the Chat GPT did. So I don't know if they ring fenced it there, but now we've only got about 4 minutes left, so I've just got some closing questions. I always like to ask the people I'm speaking with if you could please share a memory of your first personal computer.
Look, we were talking about this, and I was laughing that my first experiences are also programming with punch cards, really, and getting output that I had to then translate into something that resembled something that I wanted. It's your Hello World application that we were, sort of programming in those days. And then as it evolved, I managed to write a program that the police force then used to do its check digits for the speeding fines they were doing. So that actually got me through uni. But I think Sammy's experience has been quite different.
My first computer was the colourful Jelly Bean Mac.
Which is
the
so
iMac.
many generations after what I remember. It's not funny, really.
Yes. Well, from punch cards to punching above our weight with AI, that's quite a journey. And then my second last question is to ask if you could please share some of the best advice that you've each received in life to help you get where you are today.
Mine was actually from Anusch with the first research paper that I wanted to write, and it was to start. Just start.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's such good advice, and I think that's just fantastic. Mine has always been just do something that you love doing, and don't always look at the consequences. But we are really, really, really lucky that we're working in our field is so fulfilling and so rewarding, and I couldn't change anything else about that. So stick to something that you love doing and listen to your heart.
So what are your final messages to the viewers and listeners?
Specifically with regards to CHARLI, those people that are using it, that are thinking of use it, jump on and provide us with feedback. This is an app for women, and we really just want to grow this with the users.
And if you need assistance or help, there are lots and lots of support groups. And again, I'm going to have my Endometriosis Australia hat on. Come and say hello to us at Endometriosis Australia. You have huge amounts of resources. This journey, you're not alone. There are lots of people to assist you with the endometriosis diagnosis and management, and it's all available for you.
Well, thank you so much. It's CHARLI, CHARLI. Health. Look for that in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And to Samantha Costa, thank you as well for your time. It's really great to learn about this wonderful Australian innovation, and I hope to talk to you again in a few months or in a year's time to see how it's all been progressing.
Sounds great.
Thank you very much, Alex, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Well, just a couple of about a minute ago, just very quickly, is some last minute tech news. Grok should now be available to anybody with a blue tick. You used to have to pay for Premium Plus to be able to get that. That's available to anyone that can currently get Grok. Elon Musk has also been giving people their blue ticks back. I mean, they took them away, and interestingly, some people have reported getting them back. I heard Sonia Poulton, one of the TNT radio hosts, talking about that the other day. Exactly what Premium Plus users will be getting, I don't yet know. It'll be interesting to see how Grok is going to answer some of those health questions as well, but I'd definitely be checking CHARLI Health out if you'd like to know about the women's health. Also, robo-taxis are coming from Elon Musk. He promised this in 2019, and now it's 5 years after that. He's promising it more information on August the 8th. They're already available in San Francisco, Phoenix, Beijing, and Shanghai, but we'd like to see what Elon Musk will do with that. And also, we talked about the CSIRO. As we said before, some interesting news there. Double check everything you get from ChatGPT.